Hello and welcome to Wait, It Gets Better, the improvisational storytelling podcast, where we improvise stories for you, the listener. I'm, of course, Levi.
I'm Reed.
And I'm Seth.
And we're here to tell you a story. Really quick, before we begin, I just wanted to say that if you like these stories, if you think they're interesting, send us an email at waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com or message us on Twitter at @getsbettercast. We'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions about the stories that we write. Now on to the stories. Magic transition.
Quick to the storymobile.
Quick, Batman, to the storymobile. What elements did you guys have?
I have Pantheon. My name's Reed, by the way.
I have government type.
And I have economic system. This is a really good base world building story. I think we should go in order of how they would be created on the Earth, which is Pantheon first, then government type, then economic system. Does that sound okay to you guys?
Sure.
Yep.
Okay, let's hear about that. And a Pantheon is, in fact, the gods. If there are gods, the creating force, however that ends up being.
Okay. Well, the gods, the Pantheon, and the story about the Pantheon are sometimes not entirely the same things. And that's where we get the word mythology.
Right.
Like stories build up over time, and in a lot of cultures and civilizations, language developed, and recording that language took different forms at first in the telling of stories, and then figuring out alphabets and language and writing things down, and then writing things down on mediums that would actually last more than a generation or a few years. And this Pantheon begins with a creator that was literally outside of time and space and matter. And so there's some point at the beginning of all things, matter comes into existence at a point in time, which of course that's when time came into existence. And this whole subsystem was a universe was created. And there's this story takes place on a world that was created. And some of the children, I use the word children kind of advisedly because that's just the way we can understand it. But there were people that were creatures that were created by this great creator.
Right.
And there was one group of them that I'm going to call the keepers. And they were as the chaos that came into being with the beginning, with the making of matter, like this chunk of this world, this spheroid world that existed in a universe was just, it had matter in three states: liquid, solid, gas, and the surface of this world was water, and above this was various gases. And
Reed, are you doing something based on a book you're reading and the last thing you read was the Bible?
Something like that, yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, I just wanted to explain who these keepers were. They were helpers. They helped the creator, and they were just busy about, doing things. And I wanted to use, this is the illustration that I thought of. There's a builder, right? And he's got a crew, and everybody knows what they're doing. And the guy that has commissioned this building has changed plans, and so they're going to have to do a new thing, and so he's got to run to Menards or whatever and get some stuff, and then there's delivery of lumber, and he in the meantime he decided he needed more help, so he hired a helper that he met standing outside of Menards, and he was holding a sign, laborer willing to help. And so they talked a minute, and the guy had almost no experience, but he thought that he would like to get into the building trades. But he says, okay, so I'm going to just need you to get in the truck with me, go to the job site, and I want you to just stick with me, kind of basically, not really, but put your chin on my shoulder, watch everything I'm doing, and listen to everything I say, and just do what I tell you. And some of it will start to make sense. So he gets there, and the first thing they do, he says, go and see that pile of planks, bring me one of those. And then he kind of puts it up in the position that he wants. He says, now hold it there while I measure and mark. And so he completed this thing, he just was saying like to him, "Hey, you," and he says, "By the way, my name is Rob." He said, "I don't know that you make enough sense yet for me to actually give you a name. I'll give you a name like when I notice that you are starting to make sense, because I don't want to waste any energy getting to know you until I know that you're going to be sticking around a while." So I'm just kind of, so the creator has these keepers that he's just basically, here, hold this board while I mark and measure, but they learn to do their things, and these keepers get their jobs. And like, for example, when he brings the mass of solid ground and separates the waters, there are some of these keepers will be in charge of a ridge of mountains. Another one will be just in charge of one mountain. And there will be some of these keepers that are involved with the seas that are developed, that have been, whose boundaries have been marked. Okay.
Yeah.
So these keepers, you're getting the picture now.
Yes.
And then as the world is created, there are some of these keepers that take the form of rivers, and take the form of lakes, and take the form of trees and forests, and their job is to help manage all these things that are coming into being. And as they go on, some of them get comfortable, as once the order comes out of chaos, it's a matter of just keeping the system going. And some of them get kind of sleepy and kind of fall asleep. And sometimes they rumble to life when it's necessary, but sometimes they just sleep. And then the sons, one in particular of this creator was Harmon. And he was kind of the leader of the sons of God in kind of taking dominion over this. And they built a place called Goldheim, which is kind of a magical home for the gods and the children of the creator. Yeah. And it's kind of invisible in the heavens and situated above the frozen wastes at one end of the spheroid world. I'll just call it the North Pole but it's up there. And it's a frozen waste. And it's also kind of a physical, there's a physical passageway or gateway to Goldheim that is protected and guarded by one of the sons. And I'm going to name him because he's important. This one, oh my God, I'm sorry. His son Kang, I've named him Kang, and he's the guard of Goldheim. Okay. And he's got other sons and daughters, and they each have their various jobs. And some of them are fairly lax in their responsibilities. And then there's also, there's another class of beings that are involved here, and I'm going to bring them up in a minute. But some of these sons, brothers and sisters of Kang, form what is called the rebellion. And the leader of this rebellion is a son of the creator called Cudgel. And he's not happy with the way the whole things have gone, and he is kind of kind of the Lord of Chaos, so to speak, in this new world. And he'll upset the apple cart, and he will prod some of the keepers into action and fool them and trick them to like having a volcano when it suits this
or tsunami.
Cudgel's. Yeah, exactly. These kinds of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's another class of beings that are there to help the sons of God, and they're spiritual beings, but they can manifest themselves. And they're called the lights, and because they often are seen as a shimmering of light by the mortal beings that are created, that inhabit this world. And then I'm going to call Cudgels has seduced some of these lights to follow him. And I'm just calling them the demons because it's an easy handle to get a hold of who's they. So does this kind of lay out kind of what we've got. We've got the sons of God. I want you to think of Kang as a mostly benevolent, kind of a father figure for the children, for the mortals that live on earth, that were created kind of to have a spiritual aspect, but are very tied to the earth as far as needing shelter, food, sustenance, companionship. They create offspring. There's that whole actual physical world, and then the creatures, the birds, and all of this. And Kang is not entirely benevolent, and his children and his brothers and sisters are not entirely benevolent, but the ones that are not in the rebellion are mostly benevolent, but they're a little bit aloof sometimes, and they can be, hence, people want the favor of the gods. And so they'll do different things that they think will court favor. But
Right.
there's also those, and those are the gods that are of the rebellion, that are capricious and seductive and leading some people astray. So that's the world that we've got. And we've got this spiritual world that interacts with the physical. And does that
like it.
make any sense for you people?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
And I imagine that there's legends.
You people.
You people.
What do you mean, you people?
Yeah.
I imagine that there's
What do you mean,
legends.
you people?
There's legends about going to the north and traveling to this place.
Oh, yeah.
And that King himself might seem like kind of a mean or bad person. People would travel all the way there to see him, and
Exactly.
he's like, I'm not letting you in. I can see your intentions, or I understand your intentions. And I was thinking about that when you said that they were kind of aloof. It's like, what do I care about the movement of birds
Yeah.
or ants?
Yeah. And like, besides the
It's not
keepers.
that I hate ants,
Yeah.
but I don't want them trespassing onto my area.
Yeah. And then the keepers, they have their jobs. I mean, I'm not going to, it's not my job, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm thinking like one of the keepers has made him, he's grown up in the form of a absolutely glorious tree. And his job is to look over the forests, a particular stretch of forest, but he has gotten just really comfortable in the life cycle of the tree, and he can feel the sap running, and he can feel the birds and the creatures making homes in his bowers, and it's just, he's kind of, that's what I mean by getting things moving. Things are rolling along, and there's not really a need to pay much attention because it's all kind of hardwired into the system.
Absolutely.
Okay. Cool.
And what age are we kind of placing this at? Like a Bronze Age? Or
I didn't even get that far. I was thinking that, I'm not meddling in that yet.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, I guess maybe the government type might determine a bit of the level of technology that they're at.
I guess what I have in mind, not really, but we'll see where it goes. So the government type, at least for a country that inhabits this land, is how would it be? A theocratic military empire, if that makes sense. What it is you have kind of three heads of state, kind of the head of the priestly class, that will assign the heirship of the next emperor or king or ruler of the country, who then in turn appoints a military leader. And between the three of them, they will kind of operate the economy, the well-being of the people, and everyone in this country goes through, not that they have to serve in the military, but do go through a military training.
Right.
Right. It's kind of like, graduating high school, right? Everyone does it. So it kind of makes it, I was kind of thinking of Switzerland, right?
Yeah.
I think they do something kind of like that, where it's like one of the reasons that they can stay kind of neutral, right, is like everyone goes through like a basic training and is basically in the militia if they're needed or called on.
Yeah.
Right. So kind of that idea. However, then, no one is required to serve. They're not, let's say, conqueringly aggressive, but, keep a stance where, their populace, isn't to be messed with. Kind of also like, the idea of the Japanese when they said, should we invade the mainland United States? And it's like, well, no, there'd be a shotgun behind every blade of grass. Right.
Right.
So, they're kind of a force to be reckoned with, but they don't necessarily go about reckoning with their neighbors unless there's a large grievance. Because with the way that it also is you have, the priest class holding sway over a lot of the decisions. And of course, in that case, violence or murder is kind of shunned upon, right? So aggressive action against, unprovoked is not the way that they generally go about things.
Yeah.
trying to remember. I didn't write any of this down, but that would be kind of the circle of it. But then the emperor, isn't just like, he doesn't pick his successor, right? But then
Yeah, so it's not a dynasty
between
necessarily.
right, it might be picked from the royal house, but let's say like, under the idea of like, well, you're the oldest, so you inherit the kingdom. No, 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 no. Right? Like the other two people kind of, pick the new emperor, right? So let's say the emperor dies, and then out of kind of the, either from the people or from the aristocrat or whatever, the military officer and the priest will then pick the new emperor, who then will assign a new general. Right. So sometimes it could be the same one. Sometimes, they'll pick another general, but that's kind of the turn of power inside of that, in the way that operates, I guess. And so, yeah, inside of that, then you have kind of the, the emperor's, the people's figure, right? He's kind of entreated to, go about the kingdom, look out for, the needs of the people.
Right.
Be kind of the loved leadership figure of the people, right? Who then kind of entreats with the religious class to kind of watch out for like the spiritual needs and direction of the country. And then the military side, that's, mostly defensive as far as that goes. That's, I guess, the kind of the sum of the government type.
So did they have like a more aggressive past, and now that they've kind of established the extent of the empire, they're sort of willing to just kind of hang and in a conservative way kind of just maintain their base of power?
Yeah, this definitely sounds like it's a country that either needed to do a lot of conquering in the past, but then quickly realized that that wasn't going to serve them long term.
And perhaps, okay, so I'm thinking, so maybe they were a people group that, let's say, like over time, kind of, basically were being genocided by their neighbors, little bit at a time. And so kind of rallied their forces with kind of a religious backing, I don't know, maybe kind of like a crusade, took over their old homeland, right? And so the connection between like that popular figure, religious vigor for the reasons for doing so, and then, the military might of making it happen, get to that certain point. And then, with that, again, that more religious backing, kind of like, okay, here's where our borders were, right? This is what we set out to do, and here's where we'll stop.
Right.
Right. But maybe in a response to being kind of surrounded by all sides, being pushed back, maybe it like came down to like, a 20-30 year war that pushed, most of the people back into the main city, right? Some, charismatic leader, a general, and a religious leader kind of rally the people, and with the help of, the gods or the whatever, and, then push back their enemies, and let's say from one perspective could have kept going, but then said, well, this is where we stop.
Right. Okay, that's
So,
really interesting. And I think I will be able to answer some of those questions with the economic system. So, hundreds of years ago, when the helpers were still, you could still talk with some of them, right? When they hadn't all gone to sleep or gone silent, when the gods were younger and much more active on the earth, they are still active. They're just, people don't notice them as much. When life was fresh, as in humanity or the men, the human race was still young and just starting to dive into the earth for metals and things like that before organized civilization really came about. Before that, there were heroes, right? These were mighty men and women who traveled around, heroes for the sake of heroism, right? This is where all of our legends about people doing crazy things, like tricking the gods to give them blessings. Like the first talks about the trips to the crazy frozen north to visit the island of gold, right? The staircases that would appear, the wheels within wheels, right? At some point in time, there was a man, and this man was considered loved not by the gods, but by the creator, right? So the gods were the ones, all of his children. But this man was loved by the creator. And he was given 2 birds. Beautiful, shimmering coats, multicolored. Think like those the parrots with the really long tails. Just varied plumage, crazy big, think like 20 pounds per bird, right? He was given these 2 birds, and these birds could do insane things. Like it was said that he attached them to a chariot and flew around the earth, right? It was said that one of these birds could mimic human speech. No, could speak as a human could, right? It was these birds could do all these crazy, powerful things. And there's tons of legends about the birds. And the reason why people still tell them and people still talk to them is years after he was said to have done these things, he came to a place, a country, a well-known town, and he had not 2 birds. Those birds were gone at this time. He had 5 birds. And these birds were glorious to look upon, insanely beautiful. Not as glorious as those birds, the 2, but still incredible. And he at this time was very old, older than old. And this is where a bunch of sort of war chiefs were kind of doing their last ditch effort to do negotiation before sort of bathing the earth in blood again, right? This was the last chance for someone to give up. And he sort of made a pact with them, and he gave them each a bird. And he said, in 20 days, each of these birds will lay an egg or lay a clutch of eggs. And these eggs will be more valuable than you can possibly imagine. The birds because everyone knows about the story of the 2. He said, this is the clutch of the 2. They're gone back to the Golden City. This was years ago. In our modern day, there are hundreds of thousands. I don't know how to do the calculation, but 5 birds, 5 eggs per clutch, hundreds of thousands of these birds, millions even, right? And they all are different species, different size. It's not like this is the only kind of birds that are in the world, but you can tell them. Some of them are incredibly mundane, right? Some of the country's birds could lay a clutch every 30 days, right? Some of them laid a clutch once every 10 years, and these became rarer. And these birds, as biodiversity increased, especially between the birds, they started to change. So some birds, like one that he gave to the sea, the people who live by the sea, could dive and stay underwater for a long time and fish, almost like a fish itself, right? Other ones that were in the mountains were better with high altitude. Other ones that were on the plains, it was but as each bird as the biodiversity increased, some of them became much more mundane. Some of them, none of them could ever speak and respond to you, but some of them could mimic. So now people buy and trade in the form of birds, right? People buy and trade because some birds are very rare, and they all have about a 60-year lifespan. So it's not like, your money's no good after 2 years. But some birds are very rare. Some birds are very good to eat, right? And people go around. It's a hobby of rich people to try and collect all the types of birds that exist, right? A bit like Pokemon, except just with birds. And it's said, there's legends that if you can find the right pairs, you can breed back to the original 2.
Cool.
Right? And if you can breed back to the original 2, then your power would increase. So we're sitting here and people, let's say a couple hundred years later, people think that there's no chance that the original 5 are still around. Mm-hmm. Right? But remember, there was 2 originally, and 2 would make 3, and 3 would make 5. So there's a couple lost generations in between. And it's said that the gods themselves hunger for the birds.
Ooh.
That they themselves are fascinated by the birds, that something about the birds passed by the creation and the helpers. Mm-hmm. There are no helpers helping the birds along.
Went directly from the creator to the men.
Yep. This is a direct insertion of his, and it's some people view it as sacrilege that they just use them, that people eat them, or that people use them as currency, right? But some of them are really good. Some of them are like your average everyday pigeon that's very good at homing, they use for messages. If you can breed one that can recite words and that's good at homing, you can then speak to it, 250 words, and then it'll fly off, and it's only trained to recite that back to someone who tells it the code word.
Yeah.
Some of them are good in the sea for finding shore or for finding fish. Some of them are good in the mines for either being like a canary or finding gems and jewels or special metals.
Yeah.
Some of them are good for finding water in the desert, and so a person has a lot of things on them. And so my theory is that one of the ways that this country had an edge up is they either found or founded an apiary very early on, right? Maybe since they were kind of being pressed by all sides, they themselves had access to like ancient stock books, stock like you have it for horse breeders.
Right.
It's like, okay, if you combine the bird that has 2 green tails and a red tail, 2 green feathers and a red feather on its back, where the green is on the 2 right and the red is on the far left, with a solid copper tail, you get an excellent mimic.
Ooh,
and so
yeah.
then they had this, so they were able to use these to pass messages, to distract people. You send 1,000 mimic birds up in the air, all making the noise of horses clomping, and you can like deceive your enemy as to where you are.
I can see coats of arms based on birds and things like that. Yeah.
Or armor and plumage.
Yeah.
People using that to signify rank, but then also like you keep, a guy who goes into battle keeps a cage on him.
Yeah.
With his Dear Mary Sue letter, his.
Yeah.
That's the last thing he does before he dies. He lets and it's like considered sacrilege not to let somebody like send out their last bird out.
Yeah.
So that could be a hook for whoever it is that is the bad guy, the enemy, the work or the forces of evil, is that they have zero regard for the birds. And in my opinion, the birds have to this point been totally uncorruptible.
Yeah.
Right. So forces of evil, they'll use them because they're the currency, but they don't use them. They aren't considered sacred beasts.
Yeah.
Cool. And they can kind of be used in a lot of different places. There's like legends about them that, no dragons in this world, but birds. The rock, large birds that fly over the desert that look huge even though they're hundreds of feet in the air. It's like, what is this? So that's the economic system. And so everyone is kind of a bird person, but they're also kind of a breeder, a little bit of a breeder.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like I just had a thought that maybe our hero is educated at the bird school, right? And he has his own stock books, and he is like trying to start, every child dreams of starting their own apiary. Kind of you think about like a horse town, what's every young kid's dream but to like start his own ranch.
Yeah.
In the same way, he's like maybe he sees something different, or maybe he gets access to something. Maybe there's methods for preserving eggs that you can take an egg and preserve it for a certain amount. Like if you don't let it see the sunshine and put something on it, you can preserve it for a certain amount of time. And people use this to keep a certain line pure until they find another bird that they want to breed with it. And so it's like there's all of this minutia of things, but there's a religious aspect to it because the gods are really interested. And part of me says that's one of the ways that they won is that they were willing to take the bird, find rare birds and not sacrifice them, but give them to the gods.
Yes.
Right? So they were able to find a rare bird combination and then exchange it to one of the gods for favorable outcomes in this next upcoming fight, which they did that a bunch. And everyone's doing that. So if you go up to the gods' chambers up, in the North Pole, a lot of them have, some of them keep them alive, the nicer ones, but some of them have stuffed, like just museums filled with all the combinations or feathers, combinations of feathers and just, it's like a specific thrall for them. It's a specific thing for them,
I think something with that is that when the gods get their hands on them, they won't lay eggs.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Good.
Ooh,
That's
Right.
very
So
good.
it's
nice
Yeah.
like
one.
at first they're like, oh, we can get them ourselves, and then they get them, but then it's like, oh, now we don't need them anymore, and they become aloof. But then after a while, it's like
Yeah, these were
none of our
gifts.
birds are laying eggs.
Yeah, the creator says
Right.
these are gifts for men.
Right, right. That's good. And maybe even that they don't live that long in the gods' possession.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, this isn't for you. And so every time the gods have them, they're displays, they're taxidermied, they're, the feathers are all out and displayed on the wall. I keep thinking of like bug collections.
Yeah, yeah,
Or
like
capes, or yeah.
Right.
yeah, like in the beginning of C.S. Lewis's The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, Eustace really liked bugs, insects, preferably dead and pinned to a card.
Yes. So my thought was maybe this hero is actually going on, he's like graduated from bird college, and now he has to travel in the first expedition to the north, to where he has, he's in a ship and he's one of 10 other bird minders, and they have to keep all of these birds alive. It's like a deal that they made with the gods that they've been doing. They've been shipping these up, all of the most interesting and complex combinations, ship them up, and then make the trek. There's someone will meet you on the shore, they said. No one's met them on the shore in 40 years. Someone will meet you at the base of the mountain, they said. No one's been at the base of the mountain in 100 years, But it's a successful thing because people come back from it, but they can't talk about what they've seen. They don't understand what they see because they see, the Golden Hall, the Goldheim is what you called it, Reed?
Yeah, Goldheim.
Yeah, that's what they see, this crazy geometric or non-Euclidean piece of architecture that they don't understand, and they come back without any birds, and so it's like assumed that it's successful. So that's kind of one of the things I was thinking about, that the hero is on his way to the north. Either that
North
or
to Alaska.
What's up?
North to Alaska.
Yeah. Either that or he is on his way, because like people are constant, everyone has like the little like the farmer's almanac. It's like the apiary's almanac. It's like, it's got all the most recent combinations. It's got what the rare ones are. It's got how you should find the rare ones. It's got how to detect the eggs and egg color to see if it's a male or female. It's got like all this information, So anytime he's going and he sees like an old abandoned farm, it's like, oh, I have to like check there because they might have preserved their eggs before they died. And if I can find some like really old yellow browners, like that would be, oh my gosh, you know how much yellow browners go for these days?
Yeah.
I mean, you find me some copper beaks, dude. If you can find me some yellow browners with copper beaks, like we can actually make a go of this trip.
Yeah.
It's like all of this kind of shorthand slang that has to deal with these, so it's like weird prospecting,
Yeah.
Okay, so an idea just popped into my head.
I love those.
How it exactly fits in. So maybe on his trip, like maybe there's like, I don't know, maybe like the trickster is trying to get rid of him because he knows that this is like an up and rising. He kind of holds prominence.
Yeah.
Because the trickster, perhaps, like he's kind of maybe not the main villain, but maybe like the villain's sidekick, because he's kind of helping that along, gets like a tsunami or a storm that blows them off course, right? And they run aground. And so in their trek to then try to re-get their bearings, right? I'm almost thinking of something, almost like an Odyssey, where then they're far enough north maybe, or I don't know. Yeah. But the thing that popped in my head is, because you mentioned like this farm and it's abandoned, that's what they're finding everywhere. Right. But they come from like the city, and there's expansive lands, and they have farms, and even the countries around them, if you were to take a short visit into their kingdom, right, they have a lot of their cities all on the border. Right. I'm also thinking of like Canada, right, where like 90% of the population lives within 15 miles of the US border. But what they're finding is that right? Everything was abandoned. The rest of the world under this other influence, if you were to be in their country, right, they would be this prosperous country seemingly to be surrounded by a lot of other powerful nations, right? Because what they're showing on the border that they normally have interaction with, right? Large cities, defenses, economic stuff going on,
Yeah.
right? But all behind it is just like abandoned, right? And the farther out, like the older it is that it's been abandoned, right? Because when they were trying to get at them, right, the whole turn of the rest of the world was to get their apiary, to get their birds. And so over time, I'm also thinking back to one of the other stories we did where they were trying to build like the rocket, and everybody was like, it was just like you face the rocket kind of idea.
Yeah.
Right. And then it's like you couldn't look at what was behind you. You only focused here. Right. And so maybe that's part of like the thing is that let's say the world has been maybe not deceived, but then their attention has been muddled to only look towards right that center city. And so all the other countries have slowly over time, right, just are moving closer and closer and closer to trying to be on the border, right? And
Right.
the rest of the world is like emptying out. Not like they're dying, they're just everyone is moving to that.
Right. I mean,
and so like they kind of find a world that's like reawakening with some of the gods, some of the other aspects. I'm thinking like the Odyssey or the some kind of mythical journey that they've heard about in the stories, but as the people have left this, right, they're finding old settlements, a lot of old things that people have forgotten about, but also it's kind of inhabited by all these kind of wild forces that are whimsical, or
it could also be
seeming
that the a lot of the guardians, is that what they were called? Helpers, keepers. A lot of the keepers have started either going completely to sleep or have started choosing sides. It's like he comes to a fishing town and they only fish, to the horizon. They never go out of land.
Sight of land, yeah.
Because it doesn't work anymore. And that would maybe part of that's being the deceiver, the sower of chaos. He is still welcome at Goldheim.
Yeah.
Right. And so his first, I would say one of his greatest victories has been the deception of whichever keeper was put in charge of Magnetic North, locations, distances. Like I'm reading the Stephen King's Dark Tower series right now, and in it the world, like distance and time, have just like gotten all messed up. It's like, yeah, it's 100 leagues, but it took me 10 years to ride it by horse, and I haven't stopped riding since I started. It's like, well, that's not possible. It's like, well, possible or not, it's what it is. So human beings themselves like are clumping together more and more because you might go around a hill, and if you can't see your house from the hill, like you might come around and it's been 6 months.
Yeah. And
so everyone is kind of like, okay, we can build farms, but the farms have to be centered around the towns. Everyone's in hailing distance, and it kind of looks like everyone's kind of being harried by each other, and maybe there is some of that going on, but there's like watchtowers and like fires lit so that people can look and see humanity, and that like kind of keeps them connected to it. Because if a person were to just go off into the wilderness, who knows? Rumpelstiltskin style thing. Rumpelstiltskin? Is that the guy who fell asleep?
Yeah.
Style stuff might happen, or has happened, or is legend to happen. And so, and especially where people don't deal with or take in or deal with birds.
Yeah.
Right. Another thing I wanted to say, which represents a bit of man's fall, a man's kind of desire and self-possession to take the world for what he is instead of accepting the way that the creator has made it, is that you remember our original guy, when he came with the 5 birds, he said, oh, the 2, they've left.
Yeah.
Because who am I to hold on to? And so his goal was not so that they would turn it into the birds into an economic system.
Yeah.
His goal, or the hope, was for the interaction with the birds to spread throughout the whole world. But man has clipped the wings of the creator, to use a euphemism that's kind of true, right? They've turned it into an economic system. So even though the birds can fly, and some of them do, only the ones that are really trained to be homing pigeons are allowed.
Wow. Yeah.
You know, and so one of the things I'd say that the hero sees when he goes out is wild birds, creator birds in the wild. And it like shocks him because he sees one dive and he sees the length of the plumage and he says, that one is worth more than my house, you know, and he's talking to this guy who lives in the wilderness by himself, who doesn't know or care what time it is or what day he cares what time it is, just not what day it is. And he's like, you think, and he points to it and you think I could keep that thing in captivity? And he thinks to like the cart of things, of birds that he has, like he loves them. He feels a connection to them, but he doesn't allow them to like go out. He needs to stay in control to some degree. Well, I think this is really cool, and I think we have a decent story here. We'll have to see where it goes in the next episode, because this is just episode 1 of this.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Seth, do you have anything else you wanted to add?
I just like one other idea. I don't know if that's like the way that it works. I know like kind of in starting out, Reed used some biblical ideas. I mean, we've thrown some things like that. As far as like a progression of it, I don't know how it would work, but it would be, you know, if you have that, you know, the operator of chaos, like to me, this is almost like shaping up to be a little bit more of like that fiction by another name than actually trying to make it a fiction by another name, like when we've tried before.
What fiction by another name?
Like the idea kind of came into my head where it's like, okay, so what's like the thing that he has to do, right? So if I was kind of thinking, okay, so like you've got some of like the keepers, the gods. So I'm thinking some of like the Norse mythology or the Greek mythology, like the Odyssey and the Iliad. I'm looking at those books on my shelf right now too, but right. So it's like this quest that he's on, but then also with some of the more like biblical tones, right? The kind of agitation of it would be, you said that the kind of the keeper of chaos or whatever, he's not banned from Goldheim, right? Mm-hmm. And so it kind of popped into my head, you know, and, you know, the court of heaven, you know, was assembled and, you know, Satan came and presented himself with the rest. And the Lord God said, have you considered my servant Job?
Yeah.
Right. And so like all this like journey that he's on, whatever it is, it's like that's kind of the antagonist part of it, right?
Okay.
He shows great promise, right? He's astute, right? All this stuff. And it's like, you know, oh, this is the guy that's coming for this thing, right? Like, have you considered my, you know, servant? I don't know if our hero has a name.
I was thinking
like,
of Reuben.
Oh, Reuben. Right. It's like, oh, I can give him to give up on the journey. Cause I'm thinking, like you said, that like these people go out, but then they don't come back with the birds. Perhaps it's something that they all go out to do this thing, but then like they're all kind of, you know, they kind of give up or they kind of like leave them somewhere and say they did. Right. And come back as heroes.
And
they
that's
got
why
the
they
whatever.
Won't talk
right?
about it. Yeah.
And that's why they won't talk about it. And so it's like, oh, you know, and so like the kind of the worker of chaos comes in. It's like, oh, I bet I can come in, you know, and he comes into the council because like they can kind of see and they get the reports. And it's like, I can get him to give up the mission. Right. Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, right. So kind of like that fiction by another name. So it's like kind of some of the old mythology, but being told a little bit different, but also kind of like Job being told a little bit different.
I like it.
Where it's not like, oh, his family dies and he loses all his wealth, but it's like, you know, he goes out and it's like everything goes wrong. He's assailed at everything, right, more so than everybody else, because that's like the antithesis is, or the driving force is that unseen thing trying to manipulate what's going on around him, right? And so on his journey, he gets thrown off course, right? But he tries to stay course. He tries to figure it out. The other things are happening, right? He loses, I mean, like all his like crew that's with him gets sick, right? Half of them die, right? You know, all this other stuff kind of like in this, you know, again, I'm thinking like the Odyssey where he, you know, he's, trying to get back, and it's like all kind of like the mythology, they meet the Cyclops and the sirens and, all those things along the way. But I don't know, that was my only kind of ending thought for any kind of setup.
Yeah, I think it's good. I think it's good.
Yeah, that's great.
Let's go with that as we go into next week for sure.
Yeah.
If you like this story, ladies and gentlemen, members of the jury, send us a message. Send us an email at waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com. Message us on Twitter at @getsbettercast. Let us know what you think. Until next week, we will see you guys next week as we pick this up again. Don't forget to wait, because it gets better.